So, good evening, Brighton families. I'm Betsy Paddock, Administrator for the Aspire program, and on behalf of the district and the PTSA, I'm happy to welcome you to the first Parent University presentation of the year. Parent University was created to address issues that were identified in the 2024 Community Spring Thought Exchange Survey. In addition to tonight's presentation on vaping, there will also be other presentations during the year to address the impact of technology on student mental health, conflict resolution, and restorative practices. Tonight's presentation will focus on vaping, and I am honored to introduce Dr. Susan Gasparino, Medical Director of Clinical and Community Programs at the University of Rochester's Center for Community Health and Prevention. As a pediatrician with extensive training from the University of Rochester, where she completed her residency, chief residency, and fellowship, Dr. Gasparino has dedicated her career to promoting community health and patient-centered behavior change. At CCHP, Dr. Gasparino leads efforts to reduce smoking and vaping, offering personalized support through one-on-one sessions with physicians and lifestyle counselors, as well as group programs and educational presentations. Joining Dr. Gasparino today is her undergraduate research intern, Lalana Apasani, a senior at the University of Rochester. With her research focusing on adolescent vaping prevention and cessation, Lalana will provide a unique perspective on the vaping landscape on college campuses. Together, Dr. Gasparino and Lalana will offer insights and practical advice to parents on how to engage teens in conversations about vaping and nicotine use, and will be available to answer questions about the challenges young people face in this area today. So thank you so much for being here, and please join me in welcoming Dr. Gasparino and Ms. Apasani.
Thank you so much, Ms. Paddock. It's wonderful to be here. I'm Sue Gasparino, and I know probably several of you. I am a Brighton parent as well, and I have the honor of being one of the Board of Education members for the Brighton Central School District as well. So definitely near and dear to my heart. Yes, I come and I am in a new role at the Center for Community Health and Prevention, which is a division of the University of Rochester, which really focuses on a lot of lifestyle interventions while supporting children, adults, families in their healthy lifestyle goals. We focus very much on each individual person in behavior change using a theory of human motivation and behavior called self-determination theory, which is a key part of what we do. And so a lot of the discussions that we're going to talk about tonight in how to talk with your teens are really grounded in that autonomy for the human being. And even if that human being is a teen, how do we support their autonomy? So I'm super happy to be here. And I'd love to have another special guest introduce herself as well, who I work very closely with in this work. Lalana?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Lalana. I'm a current senior at the University of Rochester, and I'm helping out Dr. Gasparino with this initiative, and I'm very excited to be here.
Wonderful. So as we go through our slides, I think that this would work great. If questions arise as we're talking, please go ahead and put your question in the chat or raise your hand. I understand that the wonderful PTSA is here with us tonight, in addition to Ms. Paddock, to help monitor. But I'd love for this to be interactive, and really, I hope that you get out of this what you're hoping for. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So our objectives tonight in this discussion is really an overview of vaping, to take you through a brief history of the evolution of electronic cigarettes, to review some of the current nicotine-containing products that are on the market, because rapidly we're seeing a change. It's not just electronic cigarettes anymore. There are lots of other alternative nicotine containing substances that we are also finding in our schools. We're going to outline the 3 factors that make nicotine addiction difficult. What are the 3 factors that contribute to that nicotine addiction? We hope to highlight the known risks that are associated with electronic cigarette use and maybe dispel some of the myths. And then to make it practical from a parent perspective, we'll suggest some ways to discuss vaping and nicotine use with your kids. Lalana, as an undergraduate, is a little closer to the age of our kids in school, and so we'll bring a unique sort of student perspective to this discussion. So she's a wealth of information as well. And then, of course, we'll provide information for further information, for prevention resources and quit assistance if we're there. And we'll have time definitely at the end for questions as well. So jumping right off, what is a vape? So there's a lot of different terminology that we've all had to get up to par with very quickly. So electronic cigarettes or e-cigarettes are tobacco products that have been sold in the United States now for around the past 15 years. Electronic cigarettes were initially marketed as a way to quit conventional combustible cigarette smoking. And so that's important in our discussions to know that a lot of the early marketing of these products was that it was actually beneficial because it was one step better or one step safer than a traditional light up cigarette. Other terms you'll hear are ENDS, which are electronic nicotine delivery systems. And these ENDS include e-pens, e-pipes, e-hookah, e-cigars. There's a lot of electronic devices that have the same goal, which is delivering, e-juice, which most often contains nicotine. Some kids refer to it just as jewels or vapes or vape pens. So what is vaping? So vaping is really using an electronic cigarette in any form can be thought of as vaping. The electronic cigarette itself is a battery-powered device that heats liquid, nicotine, flavorings, and other chemicals into an aerosol, which is then inhaled into the lungs. The fact that it is an aerosol is one of our first sort of myth busters. A lot of people thought it was water vapor, harmless water vapor, but it's not. It's actually an aerosolized product. And an aerosol meaning that it has liquid parts to it or even small actual solid particles that are then being heated and inhaled. You'll see on your screen here, some of the devices, e-pipes, e-cigars, tank devices, and then we'll go through sort of the evolution of some of these products. The little disposable e-cigarette there that looks like a traditional cigarette was one of the first products to hit the market, but they've rapidly evolved to take many different shapes. So the evolution of the electronic cigarette over the past 15, 20 years, it's gone rapidly. So around in 2005, 2006, 2007, Generation 1 electronic cigarettes were like what you see in box 1, these cigalikes. A real combustible cigarette is on the top of your screen, and then below it, below the tape measure, is an original Gen 1 electronic cigarette designed to look just like it and disposable. It would heat, you would use it, and then throw it out. Quickly moving into Generation 2, they developed these tank systems where you can get a pre-filled or a refillable cartridge to put your liquid, your e-liquid or e-juice in. Some of these were disposable, but then a lot of them became refillable, so you could use them multiple times. Moving into Generation 3, this is where we get into more traditional jewel type products. These are tanks or mods, and then you can customize. You can customize the type of e-juice that you put with the battery-powered delivery system. And then Gen 4 are these pod mods, refillable or a pre-filled pod. And oftentimes the type of nicotine that's going in these is different than old-fashioned nicotine. Sort of classic freebase nicotine was more harsh and gave a harsher mouth and lung feel than a lot of these Generation 4 pod mods, which are using nicotine salts, which make a more gentle delivery system, which makes it so that you can consume a lot more of it without having that bodily feedback of like, I feel like I'm going to cough or it feels uncomfortable with large amounts. The e-cigarette itself, there's a lot of different images that you can find online. This is from the CDC and sort of breaks down the different parts. They're all a little bit different, but they have some general things in common. On the top is a mouthpiece. It looks like the nipple on a baby bottle. It can look like anything, but there's a mouthpiece, and that's the part that goes in your mouth. Directly below that is the cartridge, which holds the e-liquid or the liquid substance that you will be aerosolizing and then inhaling. And it can be pre-filled, where you buy it already filled in there and you just put it on, or you can refill it in a refillable bottle with whatever flavor or e-juice of your choice. Within that is the atomizer, which is the actual coil that heats up to heat the liquid. There's a sensor and power button where you can turn the device on and off, or even change the settings for how hot and things like that. And then a battery. A lot of these plug right in. In looking at the evolution and the rise of electronic cigarette use, we have good news actually to report today as far as electronic cigarettes, is that we are seeing a downfall. This particular slide is taken from 2019, the National Youth Tobacco Survey, which showed at this time almost 30% of high school students were using electronic cigarettes in 2019, and that was reported as current use. And so, any tobacco product, you can see that a large percentage of what was being used were the electronic cigarettes, vapes, Juuls, and then to a lesser extent, cigars, traditional combustible cigarettes, smokeless tobacco, hookah, and pipe tobacco. This slide just shows us a little picture of some of the other products that are on the market which contain nicotine. It's not just the electronic cigarettes. In the large one on the left, the large image, you can see a lot of things that look a lot like candy. This was developed by the American Lung Association, this image, for use in classrooms to sort of show that at first glance, for us as parents, it's hard to distinguish what is an actual nicotine containing product and what is actual like candy or something else that, or beef jerky. So there's the beef jerky on the top and the little hockey puck shaped, circle. And then below it is a smokeless tobacco in the same shaped canister. The electronic cigars, traditional combustible Camel cigarettes. And so there's a lot of different products that are designed to look fun and inviting, almost like candy. Interestingly, is that, combustible cigarettes are still being used by teens. To a lesser extent than electronic cigarettes and other forms of tobacco-containing products. But the cigarette that's most often used is Marlboro, which I found staggering as a statistic, because we all think of our parents as being, looking to the Marlboro man. But again, Marlboro seems to again be like the cigarette of choice. The picture of the pink object with the tubing is an e-hookah or an electronic hookah, which is another device. And then I want to just draw your attention to the bottom two images of looks like a little tiny tea bag. So that's a Zyn or a snoo. And so this is a modern form of smokeless tobacco. So a lot of us remember when it was chew tobacco or chaw, and that's like you would put it in your mouth and chew and then spit into like a spittoon in the Wild West, or a coffee can in the not so Wild West. These sort of modern smokeless tobaccos are meant to be put between the lip and the gum, sucked on and swallowed, and they're very discreet. And so, if you're not aware of it, you might not know that your teen is actually using these. But those are a little bit on the rise right now. And especially in, out of high school, like starting with like young college age men appear to be the demographic where that's very appealing to. We just showed the 2019 electronic cigarette status. This is our most recent survey from 2024 put out by the CDC. And it shows that there are e-cigarettes have gone down. 500,000 fewer students use tobacco products in 2024. And we really have cut down. We were at almost 30%. We were 27.5% daily users of electronic cigarettes in 2019. We're down to about 6% right now of high school students who are using. So we really have seen a decline in electronic cigarette use. It is still there. It's mostly a decline due to the truth that's getting out there about the harms of electronic cigarettes. And so we're on to something by talking about it. And so, good job to, the Aspire program and Parent University, for bringing this, because without this discussion, we don't know. And so we are, seeing a decline, and we want to keep that momentum up and be aware that still 6% of youth users are using. And so we do want to pay attention. Almost 90% of users of electronic cigarettes are using the flavored cigarettes. So that is mostly what is appealing. There's fruit flavors, and then candy, and then mint are your most popular. Marketing. Despite regulations to not market towards children, this is what marketing looks like right now, and it's embedded into social media. It's embedded into gas stations. It's a bombardment. And a lot of the techniques that the tobacco companies use to target young smokers with combustible cigarettes are being employed again to sort of target youths with electronic cigarettes. And so, again, they can say we're not marketing to children. Adults want to have the choice too, but, vanilla cookies and milk and Candy King do resonate a little bit more as being childlike and child-friendly. The Juul flavors. There's also been regulations which said that, we can't, sell flavored, tobacco products, but, there is a lot of red tape, and you can if it's refillable, but not if it's disposable. So there's a lot of ways around marketing. And so we just have to be savvy about that too. The Juul images here were taken from this massive Juul launch party in 2015 and 2019. And so that was a big push from Juul. And Juul has since been the subject of a lot of litigation because of their marketing practices. So the vape. What is in the vape? Like we talked about earlier, it's not just the water vapor. It's not just vaporized liquid that you're inhaling. It's an actual vape aerosol, which contains these ultrafine toxic particles that can interfere with lung function. It can contribute to heart disease, lung cancer. It can exacerbate asthma, and it can decrease athletic performance. As a pediatrician, what finally brings in some student, electronic cigarette users to me in the office is that they notice a change in their athletic performance. They're football players, they're runners, and they're noticing a change in the way that they're able to breathe. And the only thing that's changed is that they're using their vape more. And so again, these ultrafine toxic particles can interfere with that lung function. Other things that are in the vape liquid are preservatives like propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin, which are food grade products that you will find as preservatives. But when they were created to be preservatives, they were never meant to be aerosolized and then inhaled. There's heavy metals that have been found in the vape juice, volatile organic compounds, which have been linked to cancer, and then flavorings such as diacetyl, which has been linked to a lung disease referred to as popcorn lung. So I'm not sure if any of you have heard of popcorn lung. Some people imagine in their mind that it makes the lung, in the alveoli, the little tiny air sacs look like popcorn, but that's not actually the reason it's called popcorn lung. The reason it's called popcorn lung is that this diacetyl flavoring was used in the butter flavor, the artificial butter flavor in the microwave popcorn plants. And a lot of the people who were working there with the flavoring ended up getting very, very sick. And on X-ray and imaging, it was found that their lungs had, obliterated a lot of their smallest airways. And so that's the name had come popcorn lung really from that, due to that flavoring. And some of those flavorings were found in some e-juice, some vape juice. So nicotine is one of the components in the vape juice, and it is the nicotine that a lot of us target as a way to help stop vaping, because it's the nicotine that causes the addiction. It's what makes you keep smoking. It what keeps you drawn back to the device for a hit. Nicotine itself finds receptors in the brain, nicotinic receptors, And when it binds to the receptors in your brain, it actually releases dopamine or feel-good neurotransmitters. And so the more you use it, the more your brain upregulates and puts up more receptors looking for nicotine. And so it takes more and more nicotine to fill those receptors to release that good feeling dopamine. And so you get into a vicious cycle of nicotine and dopamine release. The problem is that there's side effects from nicotine, more so observed in adolescence. The adolescent brain seems uniquely susceptible to nicotine addiction. There have been studies in mouse models of nicotine, and it causes more damage in the adolescent mouse brain than it does in the adult mouse brain when you expose them to nicotine. The exposure to a younger developing brain to nicotine might sensitize the brain, make you sensitive to other drugs. And there have been some links to mood disorders and problems of attention specifically. At low doses, nicotine can act as a neural stimulant. And then at high doses, it actually can cause depression and so mood dampening. Some of our ER doc colleagues have seen nicotine overdose in the emergency room. Patients coming in having used too much nicotine can present with nausea, vomiting, pale skin, a lot of extra saliva, abdominal pain, high blood pressure, rapid heart rate, headaches, and dizziness. And there's nicotine overdose. If you would take, if you would swallow one of those, e-liquid cartridges, too much nicotine has been, associated with death. And then nicotine side effects, we'd be remiss not to mention the social side effects. Nicotine addiction, which causes you to like run to a stairwell or run to a bathroom to get a hit from something you're addicted to, puts you at risk for school suspension, being ostracized from friends and peers and teachers at school, parental disapproval, or, upsetment in the home, because of the addiction to the nicotine. So with all that being said, we know all of these harms now. We know it's the nicotine, it's bad, it's being marketed to teens. Why are we still talking about it? Why is it so hard to quit? Well, it's very complicated. It's not just willpower. It's not just, why can't you just kick the habit? And so, we use this model of lifestyle behavior change to like change a lot of human behaviors. Like, we see patients for healthy weight who want to like make a change to their diet. It's not as easy as it seems, right? It's not just willpower. And so a lot of the work we do one-on-one, and even in groups with teenagers, is really focusing on motivation. It's hard to quit something if you're not really motivated yourself to want to quit. There are two types of motivation that we as human beings sort of are subject to: extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. And so extrinsic motivation is this, motivation to perform an activity, either to get a reward or to avoid punishment. And so I think, as parents, a lot of time we do a lot of extrinsic motivation on our children, right? If you don't do this, then this. And there's a fear of consequence, which has its place and can be effective. But if we can tap into someone's intrinsic motivation, people can be so much more successful. So the intrinsic motivation is where like you finally get to come to a place where you perform an activity or a behavior just for its own sake and for personal rewards. So the little brain pictures here of the heads, the intrinsic, purpose, interest, mastery, curiosity, pride, those are all things that might make you want to stick to an exercise routine or to not, drink alcohol or things like that. And then extrinsic are, I'm doing it for good grades, I'm doing it for money, career, things like that. And so we keep that in the back of their mind. And even as parents, as we talk to our kids, before we just throw out punitive consequences, trying to connect the child's internal motivation or their own value system can really help in conversations with teens tap into why they might want to quit vaping or why they might not want to vape in the first place. So, the other difficult thing is that, according to the American Lung Association, nicotine addiction, is more than just one thing. It's a three-link chain, they describe it as. There are physical components, there's social components, and there's mental components. And we can think of habits in our lives that have all three of those components as well. And those who vape have a better chance of quitting and staying vape-free if they address all three. So the physical part, the mental, and the social. So the physical part, we've talked about this. This really is when the nicotine reaches that brain in seconds, 7 seconds from a hit on your vape to your brain, it releases that pleasure chemical dopamine, and that's the reward. And so, we have to address the physical addiction, and consider that in any of our interventions. The mental component, really difficult. A lot of times vaping, just like a lot of things that we do, become a part of a daily habit. A lot of inveterate combustible cigarette smokers who've smoked their whole lives, every time they sit down for their morning cup of coffee, they reach for a cigarette, and that's just part of their habit. They don't even think about it. It's just what they do. For our students who we find who vape, they find that when they sit down to do their homework in the evening, the first thing they do is reach for a vape, and that's part of their routine to start studying. Again, vaping with a morning coffee. And to break a habit, that takes conscious effort to retrain the brain from all the clues that they're getting constantly to continue that habit. A lot of students I meet with describe vaping as a friend. When something doesn't go well, when they're lonely, they have their vape, and they have like a personal relationship with it. It's part of their lives. And so asking them, to quit and give it up is difficult. And so again, acknowledging that, and the difficulty goes a long way. Some of the things that we do is being deliberate about it when we talk with our teenagers and our adult patients is, thinking about if you can delay or try to disrupt that habit. So if every time you sit down to do your homework, you reach for a vape, reach for a stick of gum, or reach for a Twizzler, or let's add something in that can help break that habit. Sometimes, with adult patients who struggle with, smoking combustible cigarettes, or even, eating when they watch television, we have them switch hands. And so sometimes smoking with your left hand instead of your right is enough to sort of break that habit, that mindless connection. So those are some of like the techniques that we use. And then social, especially when we talk about teenagers, this is huge. So household, family, friends can reinforce these social ties to vaping and belonging to a group, which I've learned so much from all the principals here, that, especially in middle school, connection to a peer group is probably the most important thing about being a teenager. And so again, the second bullet point here, in a national survey, middle and high school students said their reasons for trying an e-cigarette was because a friend was using it and because they were curious. So mobilizing the social support team when we're talking about quitting is really important, and it can be anybody. Even having a pet on board has been shown to be helpful to get teens to break that habit. And this is where parents and families are extremely important. And without further ado, to talk about the student experience and what she's learned from talking with young people over the course of the past year and a half, Lalana is up.
So a lot of what motivates vaping, especially in students and kids, is the peer pressure and the social considerations that come with even like trying to vape. And a lot of this, again, stems from the desire to fit in and make friends and seem cool and have a group of friends, especially in environments that they may feel uncomfortable in, or just in general at school when everybody's trying to find a place for themselves. So for a lot of students, for a lot of students and kids, sometimes it feels like the only way to find friends and the only way to kind of find common ground with other people. And this kind of enables that behavior of, oh, I need to keep vaping if I want to keep my friends, even though sometimes that may not be the actual case. But a lot of kids don't realize that and obviously fall into the habit and can't break that habit as they keep going. So when we talk about what teens and young adults want in terms of kind of coming up with a way to approach this problem for them, we actually talked to a youth advisory group from the greater Rochester area. And a lot of them, what they said was that we need to have a place or a person that we can go to anonymously or who they feel really safe with to share their experiences in order to begin this quitting journey with vaping. So they kind of suggested promoting student-run coalitions during school for students to help each other quit, kind of make it a peer help group and make it more helpful rather than associating any shame with it, because that's also a big thing. Sometimes people don't say anything because they already feel shameful for vaping in the first place, but we have kids have to put themselves out there and reach out for help, and that's the first big step to starting that quitting journey. They also suggested having not necessarily anonymous, but teacher and instructor resources who can be bound to confidentiality when it comes to topics like this, so that they feel safe to share their experiences, and then have them guide them to groups or people that they can talk to be able to kind of figure out this issue that they have with vaping and how they can get more help. And again, as I already emphasized, they also emphasize the importance of confidentiality in the beginning of the journey, because there's so much they don't really necessarily want to see punishment associated with it, because sometimes they do know the consequences of the behavior that they're participating in, but they really want to see themselves improve and kind of grow out of that mentality. So having a sense of confidentiality before they go out and seek help is very important in beginning, again, that quitting journey. It's also super necessary for adults to approach these conversations surrounding vaping without judgment, because even though as parents, as role models for kids, it's hard to not hold that judgment because you know they can be better. It's important to kind of go into these conversations with an open mind and see where they're coming from, because a lot of the times they do want help, they do want to be able to express these feelings to you, but they're scared to do so. So having parents and families help in this journey is, again, approaching the conversation without judgment, without associating punishment with the conversation, is really important for kids, because they want to share their feelings and be honest, but they also want you to be honest with your feelings and how this kind of behavior is making you feel as a parent or as guardian. And that's super important for them to understand and empathize with. And it also just creates this open communication between the both of you, and it removes this fear of consequence for kids, because again, that's a really huge thing for kids and children. They're scared of what could happen if they say, oh, I do want help, I just don't know where to go. So being able to do that and being able to engender this open communication with children is super important for conversations like this. And a way to do this is attend training or support groups, or even talk to other parents, because being able to get advice on how to talk to your children or understand better what kind of situation they're in is always helpful to open up this kind of conversation.
Excellent. Thank you, Lalana. Attending that like youth research advisory board meeting was really, really eye-opening. And Lalana attended the entirety of it and, came away from it saying that, the teens were like, most of the presentations that you all do for us are like really sweet and nice, thank you, but they're not graphic enough. Like the teens wanted like, show us what you mean. We want to see pictures of like black lungs and yellowed teeth. Like they want to, and adult smokers don't want to see that. They're tired of seeing that. They know those consequences, but the youth were like, that's what we want, be honest with us and tell us, what the consequences are, because it's water vapor to us unless you tell us it's not, right? And so that was really eye-opening for us. And so Lalana is working on, changing a lot of our student-facing presentations really to include what they said would be helpful. That's why student voice and all of this is really important. What resources are available? Now, these are resources available for teens, but for you all as parents, these are awesome sites to look at. There is so much information out here. There's a program called the Truth Initiative, and you can text Ditch Vape to get text messaging and sign up. But the Truth Initiative, it's got a wonderful website, as does the Real Cost, another website. The Real Cost website is extremely interactive. It's graphic, just like the teens want. It really is tailored towards teenagers. So I would definitely encourage all of you to just check out these amazing online resources. In New York State, youths can text drop the vape to this number. And again, it's a series of motivational text messages because a lot of kids, they don't really, I mean, even though we offer one-on-one services and, we're trying group programs, a lot of teens are like, I don't want to do that. I don't have time. I've got sports. And so having these text interventions have proven really helpful. Local resources. So again, CCHP, Center for Community Health and Prevention, we're doing, one-on-one counseling, with our tobacco counselors, our lifestyle counselors, which are free visits for teens. We don't bill for those at all when you meet with a tobacco counselor. And then, some adults and young people are at the level where they would benefit from nicotine replacement therapy, which is, we've heard about it for adults. So it's like where they wear the patch or chew the Nicorette gum. So it's not over the counter for teens, but we can use it and prescribe it. And some teens have found it very successful. So if you take a hit on your nicotine containing vape, it hits the brain in 7 to 10 seconds. A patch, which has nicotine in it, is a steady state, slow amount of nicotine, which at least sort of blocks some of those receptors. So your cravings aren't as severe. And then we can actually, working with your school nurse, write a plan for you to be able to take a nicotine gum or a nicotine Nicorette lozenge to help those breakthrough cravings. So we can work with your school nurses and your school substance abuse counselors to help create a legitimate quit plan for students who are really ready and addicted to nicotine and ready to quit. Something that we're starting here is we're offering group programs through the American Lung Association now called Not on Tobacco. The American Lung Association, back when the combustible cigarette epidemic was big with teens, started this group program, which is evidence-based to have, teens sitting together peer-to-peer with a facilitator in a school setting talking about how to stop smoking. And they've revamped it and they offer it for vaping as well. And it's a two-pronged delivery. So they offer something called in-depth, which is an alternative to suspension. So for some kids who really do have a nicotine addiction and cannot stop vaping and therefore get, caught, and it's against school policies, they might face suspension. As an alternative to that, there's this in-depth program that we can help schools with, which is 4 to 6 sessions of, mandatory attendance, really talking about sort of what we've been through tonight, sort of the truth about vaping. Quitting is not, a requirement of the program, but listening to the information and talking and participating is. And then for those students who do say, you know what, I really do want to quit. I've had enough of this vape. I want to break up with my vape. We can do this Not on Tobacco, which is 10 sessions delivered at school for a group. And it takes you through all sorts of things. in the addiction, setting a quit date, and then how to stick to that plan. Here are some of the resources that I talked about, just a little snapshot of them. So this is the real cost, and you can just see a piece of the graphics. Again, it's very like teen friendly, and you can click on all these things and it takes you through like what's in them. Helpful not only to teens, but to parents to sort of know like what to look for, because the devices, honestly, they change so fast. It's hard to know really what you're even looking for to start a conversation. Down here is the New York State Quit Line. In the middle here is the Truth Initiative. Over here are the 10 sessions for the Not on Tobacco program that you can implement in a school, with a trained adult. Session 1, you start with reasons for quitting. Right in the middle, you set your quit date, and then you have sessions following that to talk about like how to stay quit. And then up on the top there is the Center for Community Health and Prevention. And I will say a lot of pediatricians, family medicine doctors, primary care doctors also would love to have this conversation. They have limited time, so they might not be the one to bring it up, but if you bring it up, your primary care provider will have a wealth of resources as well, and that's a good place to start. So just to review, like talking about a quit plan, for students who are already, using vape devices, really imperative to address those 3 link chain features, the physical, the mental, and social. So just taking away the vape and saying you're grounded for a week in and of itself has not been proven super effective. If at the same time you do that though, you talk about the physical addiction and you make sure that you sort of reflect, like I understand how your brain is really craving this nicotine right now. Discuss the symptoms of withdrawal that you may be feeling. Work together to find alternative behaviors, and then consider a visit to your primary care doctor or the providers at CCHP to offer that nicotine replacement therapy, which can be very effective in stopping a high level of addiction. Mental, encouraging activities or hobbies and tapping into what's important. So a lot of the athletes that come who finally say, I'm ready to stop this vape because I can't run as fast or it hurts to breathe, channeling that, and taking advantage of, each individual child's goals, and their own values is very strong. And then socially, we're their social networks at home. Clearly not just modeling our own behavior where it's like, it's okay for me to do it because I used to smoke. Kids have a hard time teasing apart that message where how is it safe for you, but not for me? And so, being honest about your own use at home, if you do have use at home, and sort of speaking to everything Lalana said about, trying to create non-judgmental approach to talking to your teens and coming at it from, hear the truth that I know, tell me what you know, and really having an honest, non-judgmental conversation to start. And then encouraging your child, the age-old parent conversation of if they're not going to like you, because you stopped vaping, they really weren't your friends to begin with, deliver that in a cooler, more child-focused way. But that's the general idea of what we can do as family members. In summary, we've talked an awful lot on this open dialogue I wanted to create. We've done a lot of talking. But we hope you just understand the rapid evolution of all these products and how the initial marketing as being safer than cigarettes doesn't necessarily mean that these are safe, right? And so for people who have never smoked before, starting to use electronic cigarettes is not safe. It's not. Trying to clarify and address misinformation with your teens, they might well firmly believe it's just water vapor. And so, you starting a conversation with, I actually attended this thing, and you know what? It's not just water vapor, it's an aerosol. And let's look at therealcost.com. Ask questions of your students. Offer support. You want to talk to our pediatrician about it? And then seek assistance when needed. I know that Ms. Paddock, all your principals, are willing to help and to try to get you connected with resources to help. I'm available. Lalana is available. So definitely don't be afraid to seek assistance when needed. And now we will take any and all of your questions and answer them to the best of our ability.
And I'm happy to monitor the chat as well. And I wondered if I could start with a question. This was an incredible presentation and so informative. I was just curious, when you work with kids in the Not on Tobacco program, how many of them have you noticed are also maybe using marijuana as well? Because I could see where this program could help students that are not only using vapes and nicotine, products, but also other drugs.
Very, very good question. So we are just getting started with Not on Tobacco. We had trialed some other teen group vaping interventions, but it turns out that 3:30 after school is not a great time and no one wants to log on at night. And so we've really come to the conclusion after meeting with like teens in the area that in school is the place to like meet teens where they're at. And so a lot of, our experience with Not on Tobacco is just reading their success stories. And there is a ton of dual use. So whether it's, starting with electronic cigarettes and then jumping into marijuana, or whether they were dual use to begin with, most of these interventions really are tailored to the nicotine containing part because we know so much about the nicotine receptors and how that works. But making any behavior modification or lasting lifestyle change really does tap into all the same things. And so that same type of intervention can absolutely be effective for other types of substance use. But again, meeting with a substance use counselor might be something that we determine might, even be better if it is more than just nicotine addiction.
Thank you. If anyone else has a question and they just want to ask, go right ahead. I don't think there's that many people on here where you would be interrupting one another. All right.
Hello, yes.
Oh, go ahead. Yay.
Okay. So, you know, sorry, I get a little nervous when I talk on Zoom. Um, I think that most parents are a little bit terrified of their children falling into this trap, especially when it comes to, you know, uh, the community, administration, student body finding out that their children are vaping. And I don't. You comment that the numbers are going down, but I feel a little concerned that that doesn't necessarily reflect our experience that we're seeing. Um, I feel that my child's peers are actively promoting and pressuring my child into the use of nicotine and THC resin while they're in the community around the schools and engaging in school. This didn't actually start in high school, but it actually started in their last years of middle school. Um, I noticed that I found a video online that was produced by Dr. Hall in 2023 that was shown to the students at the high school. But I only found this out by searching Google and finding it on YouTube. And I'm just wondering, are there things being done in the schools in the middle school to educate children on the dangers and traps of these drugs? Um, and I'd just like to know a little bit more about that.
That's school specific. Ms. Paddock, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. And I know I missed Dr. Edmonds. Are you still on the presentation? Okay, I didn't know she was still on. So I know that at the high school and at the middle school and at the elementary schools, actually, we just finished Red Ribbon Week. And Ribbon Week is organized by Lance Mitchell, who is our social worker, but also helps with prevention. And so during that week, we did a really, really heavy focus on making safe choices. I know at the high school level, and now I'm split between the two buildings. Dr. Hall did a presentation with the other administrators on the dangers of vaping. I know that he did that because I got some feedback from students. In the health classes is where they're really focusing on it at the middle school. And with 8th grade health, it's an entire unit that they are doing. So that is what I can speak to. One of the things that I was thinking, and Mark, thank you so much for your question, because I know that this is it was when you were talking, Dr. Gasparino, and was saying that the numbers were going down, I actually had some thoughts about it, because I know one of the reasons that we wanted to have this presentation is because this is weighing so heavy on people's minds. And I think that the resources that you have shared tonight are really going to make us think about things differently as a district in terms of what we can offer, and maybe work in tandem with you, Dr. Gasparino and Lalana, so that we can provide some different resources for families. Because this is something that we are not experts in. We go to the experts because that is what they focus on. And I think that this is one of those topics that it is a gateway. We want to make sure that we are really starting to get on it, and we've been working on it, but we also know that there are students who are doing this. They've been doing it for quite some time, and they don't necessarily have the skills to be able to stop on their own. And so it's an interesting topic that we need to think about a little bit differently, and I know that we are. And at the elementary level, to further answer your question, the health classes are also addressing healthy choices at the intermediate grades, but not quite the same level as what they're doing at TCMS and at the high school.
And a question just came into the chat too about what age we're seeing it. So Mark, you are absolutely right about seeing it like at the end of middle school. So that really is, typically, we're seeing end of middle school, early high school is, anecdotally what we're seeing in like our practice. And, even when we saw a slight dip in high school use, and this was in 2023, we saw a slight increase in middle school use, and so then the numbers change quickly as well. And again, even though we're seeing an overall drop, it doesn't often feel like that, if, you're not experiencing that in your child's social circle too, because that's still a lot of students who are using electronic cigarettes. And so that's why, we would be remiss if we said, oh, it's dropping, nothing more to do. That is absolutely not true. Like, we've had a slight drop. Good. Let's keep going. So excellent questions and thoughts.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the biggest my concern is that even as we're trying to work with our child, to intervene with our child, there's still this enormous pressure for them from, the kids are they're hanging out on the street and, riding their bikes around the community, and heading over to 12 Corners, traveling around to different playgrounds. And it's really, it's, I don't see how to to step into that and start to work to break that down in some way. I feel like it's really there needs to be some sort of for me, for my peer, for the peer group, like we have to get into the parents and connected with the parents and really build a network to kind of like support within it and try and to intervene at like throughout the community in a way. And I that's a lot of work to build.
Thank you, Mark. And that's you make very, very valid points. And we one of the reasons that we're doing this parent university is not only in recognition that these things are happening, but so that we can start to raise more awareness around it and all of the steps. I loved how the presentation took us really from soup to nuts, and it covers all of it. And then as we start to have conversations in different ways, hopefully we really will see a reduction. But you're right, it's going to be we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, this is really great, and thank you for providing it. I was really very surprised when I started to see just the variety of devices that are coming in and the way that they're marketed and the flavorings. Um, it's really geared towards, I mean, it is so geared towards the children. And I recently saw a store. We were driving in our car and saw a store, and the store. Then this was in Rochester, and it was just very colorful. Like you were looking into like you were at the mall and going into like a one of the popular clothing little outlets in the mall. Just really, really, really eye-catching and cartoon characters and things trying to draw the children in. I know that they're not supposed to be doing that, but I can see that it's just somehow attractive. And that's like how do you intervene on that? It's really a big challenge for us.
What's interesting, Mark, is the Attorney General of New York State, Letitia James, like actually sued Juul for these marketing tactics on behalf of New York State and won a massive multi-million-dollar settlement for those tactics, for the same observations that you had about how can you say it's not marketed to children? It looks like a candy shop or a store at the mall. And so Juul has had to pay, but as quick as we can make one settlement, it feels like someone else has found another loophole. And so, we didn't talk about this tonight, but, policy also, and advocacy, at that level is also something that's a very important part of this conversation, right? And, not marketing and controlling where we can sell and distance from schools and all of those things that we went through and pursued legally with combustible cigarettes, we have to do again now with electronic cigarettes. And I did see one more question about how to start a conversation with a teenager who feels vaping is, quote, not a big deal. Good question. Lalana, you want to take a stab at it?
I think with conversations like that, it's if they themselves are kind of have that habit already and are engaging in it, I think talking to them and being like, what draws you to this? Why are you, what is kind of not motivating you, but like, why is this something that you want to do? Is this something that your friends are doing that you're seeing on TV? Where is this coming from? Is I think the first way to get something out of them. And then the second is really, again, I know the kids that we talked to in the youth advisor group were like, we want to know the bad things. And sometimes that could be the best way to be like, this is what is going to happen to you if you continue with this, which is generally the harsher way to go about the conversation. But I think sometimes a more beneficial way is to try to understand where they're coming from and then be like, well, I understand where you're coming from, but we can try to find other ways to help you and navigate this with you. And we're not punishing you in any way, but trying to help you out of this bad behavior are all good starting points for this conversation because you want it to be a non-judgmental space. You want it to be a space where they learn from their mistakes and have it more in terms of kind of help them grow out of the habit.
It's good advice. Yeah. So like, it's not a big deal. So again, just reflect back. What makes you say that? You know, explain your reasoning to me. What is your source of information on this? You know, and then, you know, really trying to like do a little myth bust, non-judgmental, because you know, your reflex is like, cause it's awful, you know, and you want to just, you know, explain your reasoning. Like, why are you doing it? You know, so, cause I see you reaching for it 17 times a day. So I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's not a big deal, right? You know, and then, you know, reaching out for outside help if you do think it's a problem. And then, yeah, it's tough because you do want to empower them to come to an informed choice themselves. And I think a lot of time they really don't think it is a big deal. I think that's an honest answer from a lot of our teens.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, if there aren't any other questions, I do want to thank Dr. Gasparino and Lalana for taking the time tonight to put together such a beautiful presentation, so informative. I know I learned a ton, and you know, it was just great to hear from you. This has been recorded, and so we will be putting it on the BCSD website on the Student Services page. I've already cleared that with Mrs. Spagnola. Thanks for being here, Mrs. Spagnola. It's been great to have you, and everyone else who's been here. And then you will be able to access the video. I'll try to get it up by tomorrow. And who knows, down the road, like I said, Parent University will be having other topics this year. And then there might be other presentations based on the presentations that we have this year, because it sounds like people really want to learn more about this because it's so important for how we can all support kids together. So I just wanted to thank everybody again. And I hope that you all have an absolutely wonderful evening.
Thank you so much for hosting us. Go Bruins.
You're welcome. You are welcome.
Thank
Go
you.
Bruins. Thank you.
Thank you all. Amazing job. Thank you.